Comfies.
Hey, and happy midsummer! I am in the spirit, so I'm wearing my flower crown. It's a fake one, unfortunately. I did make a real one today, but it is dead already. This is my first, I'm so excited. This is my first Runestone episode. So, since I want you guys to really take in all of the information I'm providing for you together with the video, I won't chit chat with you after the video because I want you to really absorb all of the information and all of the pretty videos and photos. So, yeah, let's get into it. I'm excited. Have a happy midsummer. Hej då!
I would like you to imagine stumbling across a hidden away garden in the middle of nowhere on the quiet countryside of Sweden, where the summer winds are gentle and warm and the roaming of cows can be heard in the distance. Even though this huge garden at first glance seems kind of empty, the story I will give you will make you see it in a whole other light. When I see this place, I can imagine it being full. And I will explain to you why. Southwest of a city called Skövde in Sweden, out on the quiet countryside, lies a magnificent place, where once a medieval church building proudly stood. This is how the church looked, according to a sketch made during the year 1671. Just observe the small types of windows decorating the walls. It is very similar to another church I've recently seen at another runestone location. Here is a picture of it, just so you will be able to imagine the church's shape more vividly. So just ignore the big tower and imagine the windows being very much smaller, and there you have it. This church building has since then been torn down, as many other medieval churches during the 1800s. Why that is, I will explain in its own episode further down the road, in an episode where we will talk about church buildings in relationship to runestones. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The only thing remaining of this building is a memorial stone, which reads, "Here stood Rådenes church. From early medieval times until 1865, the congregation raised this stone." And of course, the noticeable bell tower is still standing. This bell tower looks just as in the sketch. In the sketch you can also see a long line of runes. These runes were carved into the arch within the church. And they tell the story about some very important people. And one of these people we will return to later on in this story. The runes reads something like this: Birgitta, Peter, and Åke made the church. Assur and Skule and Tord and Gunnar in Huggersta provided help in building it. The Birgitta mentioned in these runes might be the Saint Brigida or Saint Brigid, who lived during the years 453 to 523 AD. She was the founder of Kildare Abbey over in Ireland. The cult of Birgitta was brought to the north later on during the English mission, and this isn't the only manifestation of her presence in the north during these times. Peter Eriksson Lindskog writes about his experience being inside of this church. These texts were published during the early 1800s. He writes something like this. There was a runestone standing in the cemetery. It was during the reparation of the church put into the church's floor. The stone has a Thor's hammer depicted in the middle of it, a very defined carved runes which says Rani had this stone made for Peter, his father. He also mentions in his texts that the name Rani is the source of the name Ranis Hed, which is also Rådene. And the runestone stores his and his father's name. Besides the bell tower and a couple of stones written with the Latin alphabet surrounding this location, there is a relief from this church that has been moved to a still existing one in Hugersta. It was assumably moved during the tearing down of Rådenes church. Now, when I have set the scene, let's talk about the runestone. As you might have guessed, the stone standing in this location today is the very same stone that Peter Eriksson Lindskog wrote about during his time in this church. This runestone was originally a grave slab, and it was removed from the church's floor during 1861. It is a stunning and very well kept stone, with a very unique look to it. Today many people would probably presume that this symbol is a cross, since it is standing where it's standing. But just as Peter Eriksson Lindskog, I more see a Thor's hammer in it than a Christian cross. The bottom of it is too short to be anything else than a Thor's hammer. If you know your Norse mythology and Norse sagas, Thor's hammer is very famous for having a very short handle. Let me read the runes to you again. And excuse my old Norse, I don't speak it. Yet, at least. Rani, Lit, Gera, Stin, Thenna, A, Betar, Fader, Sin. Rani had this stone made for Peter, his father. And do you recall when I told you before that there is a person from the church's ark runes that we would bring up again? Well, Peter is that someone. Peter on this very stone is presumably the very same Peter who had this church made in the first place during the year 1100. It would make sense to keep his stone around. And somehow I can't help but to think about how proud he would be to still be here, looking over his beloved creation through all of eternity, and knowing that his son gave this place its name. I would like to thank all of you for watching this episode. So, this is where we do it, guys. What did the stone say to the moose? Well, that they might have teared down your building, and everyone you've ever known has been gone since 1,000 years. But Peter, you and your story will never be forgotten. Thank you for being a part of history and leaving your mark.